There are moments where you did everything right. You took time off, slept more, did less, and even after that, there's this persisting exhaustion. So why do you still feel tired? Well, psychology says it's a signal. A signal that what's draining you goes deeper than your calendar. This quiet, confusing fatigue has a name, and it's becoming more common than we admit. To understand why time off doesn't restore you anymore, you have to look beyond sleep and schedules, and look into burnout, overstimulation, and the hidden psychological load we carry even in moments of supposed rest. We are taught to believe that exhaustion is a scheduling problem. Work too much, rest too little, and fix the balance as energy returns. So when you finally step away and reach the break you've been counting down to, you expect relief. You expect your body to soften, your mind to quiet, and your motivation to return naturally. But instead, something unsettling happens. You feel flat and restless. This experience has become so common that people assume it's personal failure. What's actually wrong is the way we understand rest. Generally, restlessness after rest tells you that the exhaustion you're carrying is not just physical, and not easily undone by time alone. The following reasons explain why breaks no longer restore us, especially in high-pressure modern environments. Number 1. Mental burnout is quiet, persistent, and deeply misunderstood. Unlike physical tiredness, burnout doesn't resolve when activity ends. You can be lying on a couch, technically doing nothing, while your mind remains overworked. Thoughts keep cycling, ideas keep intruding, anxiety hums in the background. Even moments of leisure feel mentally crowded. This is because burnout is not about effort alone, but prolonged cognitive strain without adequate psychological recovery. From a psychological standpoint, burnout reflects a brain that has spent too long in problem-solving mode. Decision-making, performance monitoring, self-evaluation, and future planning. These processes overload the prefrontal cortex. Over time, the brain adapts by staying alert even when there's no immediate demand. So when work stops, the brain doesn't interpret it as rest. It interprets it as temporary suspension, a pause before the next demand. That's why rest feels fragile. People experiencing mental burnout often describe an inability to enjoy free time without thinking about what they should be doing. Guilt creeps in. Productivity anxiety lingers. The mind replays unfinished tasks or anticipated future ones. This is conditioned hypervigilance. When your value has been long tied to output, your mind treats stillness as suspicious. In a city like New York, intensity is admired. Hustle culture always follows identity. Long hours, side projects, constant networking, and self-optimization are socially reinforced. Even on vacation, many New Yorkers remain mentally plugged in. They check emails just in case. They scan messages. They think in timelines. Rest becomes performative rather than restorative. So, people return from long breaks feeling anxious, as though they have fallen behind an invisible race, because mentally they never left it. Ironically, longer breaks can intensify burnout symptoms. Without the distraction of tasks, the mind finally has space to surface exhaustion, but without tools to process it. This leads to mental fog instead of clarity, irritability instead of calm, and emptiness instead of relief. The person assumes the break failed, when in reality, it exposes a deeper depletion that time alone cannot heal. Number 2. Modern rest is loud, and even relaxation has become something to consume rather than experience. Many people exit demanding schedules only to fill the silence with constant digital input. The result is a state of continuous stimulation without engagement, and it leaves the brain exhausted. In hindsight, true rest requires a reorientation into the brain's default mode network. This will be a state associated with reflection, emotional processing, memory integration, and creative insight. Fortunately, overstimulation blocks this reorientation, when your brain is constantly reacting, but it never enters recovery mode. Dopamine spikes repeatedly without satisfaction, creating fatigue without fulfillment. You feel busy while doing nothing. Passive entertainment feels easy, so it's mistaken for rest. But ease is not the same as recovery. Over time, overstimulation dulls emotional responsiveness. People report feeling mentally tired but unable to sleep deeply, restless during downtime, and unmotivated without knowing why. The nervous system stays activated, never settling. Many people avoid quiet because it feels unsettling. Silence allows thoughts and emotions to surface, especially unprocessed stress. Overstimulation keeps those feelings at bay, but avoidance comes at a cost. Without moments of low input, the brain cannot recalibrate. Rest becomes shallow, fragmented, and unsatisfying. Number 3. Emotional fatigue is one of the most invisible forms of exhaustion. It doesn't come from lifting heavy things or working long hours alone. It comes from carrying expectations, managing reactions, suppressing feelings, and staying composed, day after day, across situations that offer little space for release. Unlike physical effort, emotional labor often goes unacknowledged, even by the person performing it. And yet, emotionally exhausted people are often the ones who feel the least restored after rest. However, emotion regulation requires attention, self-monitoring, and restraint. In many cases, it involves monitoring tone, anticipating how words will land, avoiding conflict, being appropriate, staying agreeable, and staying strong. When this kind of regulation becomes chronic, the emotional system never fully powers down. Even during rest, the body remains subtly tense, holding feelings that were postponed, reactions that were swallowed, and needs that were never voiced. Rest may stop the schedule, but it doesn't empty the emotional load. Consider someone who's known quietly as the stable one, the person others vent to, the one who listens, reassures, smooths tension, and keeps things from escalating. In friendships, they absorb. In family spaces, they stay calm so others don't fall apart. No one asks how heavy that role feels. When a break finally arrives, this person feels exposed. Without constant interaction to manage, suppressed emotions begin to surface. Fatigue deepens instead of lifting. Rest becomes emotionally dense rather than relieving. Emotional fatigue disproportionately affects people who are relied upon heavily but rarely relieved, including caregivers and helpers, high-performing students who self-regulate constantly, and people in leadership or service roles. These people often appear functional, composed, and capable, but feel internally depleted in ways they struggle to explain. Without expression, acknowledgement, or release, emotional tension remains stored. People wake up from long sleep still tired, not because rest failed, but because the emotional system never rested. The mind cannot recover what it was never allowed to put down. For emotionally fatigued individuals, work provides structure and distraction. Rest removes both. In the quiet, unresolved feelings ask for attention: grief, resentment, frustration, sadness, anger that had nowhere to go. This is why rest can feel strangely heavier than busyness. The solution to emotional fatigue is not more sleep or longer breaks alone. It's emotional processing with safe expression, validation, and permission to be uncomposed. Until emotions are allowed to move, they remain a silent weight. Number 4. One of the deepest reasons rest fails is nervous system conditioning. When life has required constant deadlines, financial pressure, competition, uncertainty, the nervous system adapts. It learns that alertness equals survival. Over time, calm moments become unfamiliar. Psychologically, the body learns patterns faster than the mind. If rest historically preceded stress, the nervous system learns to stay activated during downtime. This produces restlessness during breaks, anxiety when doing nothing, and guilt while resting. It's a way your body protects itself. For many people, rest isn't uncomfortable because they don't know how to relax. It's uncomfortable because it destabilizes who they believe themselves to be. This is why productivity-based identity forms gradually after being praised by teachers, rewarded by institutions, reinforced by cities that equate motion with worth. Over time, doing becomes synonymous with being, so when the doing stops, something inside feels unmoored. During long breaks, people with productivity-centered identities often report feeling restless despite having nothing to do, a vague sense of uselessness, and an urge to turn the break into something productive. Rest removes structure, and with it, validation. Without output, there's no confirmation of worth. The nervous system interprets this as danger, not freedom. When identity depends on productivity, rest becomes psychologically effortful. You're constantly negotiating whether you're allowed to exist without proving value. That negotiation is draining, and until identity expands to include rest as a valid state, time off will continue to feel inadequate. Number 6. One of the most underestimated drains on rest is future-oriented thinking. Even during breaks, many people are not mentally present. They're pre-living what comes next, the workload waiting on the other side, the pressure to come back stronger, the fear that rest won't be enough to fix what feels wrong. It goes without saying that anticipation activates the same stress pathways as real demands. The brain does not reliably distinguish between now and soon. An imagined future can trigger the same psychological response as an immediate threat. So when your mind is rehearsing what comes next, your nervous system stays activated, even if your body is still. You may be lying down, but you're bracing. Muscles remain slightly tense, breathing stays shallow, thoughts keep circling, and rest never quite lands. Consider someone on a long break who wakes each morning with a subtle awareness of how many days remain. At first, the number feels comforting, but as the break progresses, the countdown grows louder. They begin to mentally organize what will happen afterward. Emails waiting, responsibilities stacking, expectations reactivating, and even pleasant moments are shadowed by the thought that it won't last. So instead of inhabiting rest, they observe it from a distance, measuring, anticipating, and preparing. The body rests and the mind prepares for impact. Ironically, longer breaks can intensify anticipatory anxiety. Without immediate tasks to anchor attention, the mind fills the space with projection. These thoughts don't arrive dramatically, they slip in quietly during moments of calm, and each thought subtly reactivates the stress response. For many high-functioning individuals, rest is unconsciously treated as preparation. It's meant to make you more effective later. On a different note, anticipation once helped you succeed. It made you responsible, prepared, and resilient. But when readiness becomes constant, the nervous system never receives the signal that it is safe now. The present moment becomes merely a waiting room. True rest requires psychological permission to exist without rehearsal. Without that permission, the body never fully releases tension, no matter how long the break lasts. However, exhaustion is not only internal. Cities teach bodies how fast to move, how loudly to think, how alert to remain. Even during breaks, the surrounding pace continues, and your nervous system stays in sync with it. You may stop working, but your environment does not stop asking things of you. Fast-paced cities demand constant micro-adjustments, navigating crowds, filtering noise, responding quickly, and processing dense information. Over time, the body adapts by maintaining a higher baseline of alertness. This becomes your normal. For instance, Hong Kong is compact, vertical, and relentless in motion. Even during breaks, residents remain physiologically stimulated. The nervous system rarely gets a signal that it's safe to slow down. Rest becomes something you try to do against your environment. Moreover, the nervous system responds more to sensory input than to calendars. If noise, speed, and density remain high, the body stays activated. This is why people often return from breaks feeling overstimulated rather than refreshed, especially if they never left the same environment. Travel doesn't guarantee rest if the pace remains high. Packed itineraries, constant navigation, and pressure to experience everything recreate the same nervous system demands elsewhere. The body doesn't rest just because the scenery changes. Number 7. Perhaps the most quietly destructive belief about rest is the idea that it must be deserved. This belief rarely sounds cruel or extreme. It hides behind reasonable and socially approved thoughts like, rest becomes conditional and conditions are rarely met. Even when work pauses, the internal elevation continues. The mind keeps score and never fully settles. When rest is treated as a reward, it stops being restorative. Instead, it becomes something you must justify. This creates a state of self-surveillance. Even during downtime, the mind scans for evidence that rest is allowed. Any perceived shortcoming or unfinished work, unmet goals, and comparison to others reactivates guilt. You are resting, but under review. This keeps the stress response alive. Muscles remain subtly tense, thoughts stay alert, relaxation feels provisional, as if it could be revoked at any moment. Imagine someone finally sitting down after weeks of effort. The break has arrived and the calendar is clear, so the responsibilities paused. But instead of relief, an internal voice immediately starts tallying. They try to relax, but guilt leaks in around the edges. Even pleasure feels suspicious. Rest becomes something to consume quickly, carefully, without fully sinking into it. However, guilt is not just a thought. It's a physiological state. It tightens the body, sharpens attention, and keeps the nervous system alert. From a biological standpoint, guilt signals that something is wrong and that correction is needed. The body cannot enter deep recovery while it believes it is doing something morally questionable. You cannot rest deeply while justifying your right to rest. Many people learned early that rest followed effort. Praise arrived after productivity, not exhaustion. Over time, rest became associated with permission rather than necessity. So even as adults, rest feels like a moral issue instead of a biological one. This is why people often feel more exhausted during breaks than during work. Work offers structure and justification. Rest requires internal permission, and many people were never taught how to give it. Eventually, true rest only begins when it is reframed as a biological and psychological requirement, not something to be earned through productivity or suffering. And until rest is granted unconditionally, it will remain incomplete. Overall, mental burnout, overstimulation, emotional fatigue, nervous system dysregulation, identity collapse, anticipatory anxiety, environmental pressure, and conditional rest all interfere with recovery in subtle but powerful ways. Together, they create a world where people stop working but don't feel safe, and time off exists without restoration. So, if you ever have returned from a long break feeling disappointed, confused, or still exhausted, the problem was never that you didn't rest correctly. The problem is that resting today is asked to do too much, while being given too little support. You're trying to recover in environments that reward speed, within identities built on productivity, while carrying futures that never stop demanding attention. Ultimately, real rest begins with unlearning the conditions that make stopping feel unsafe. So let's hear your thoughts in the comments. And if this video helped you see the patterns more clearly, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this.